is a very simple concept. We take the work out of networking and help women to achieve their goals. And the way that it works is you apply to become a member of the crew. And then our algorithm matches you with 9 other women in your city based on your personality, your values, your demographics, your goals. The 10 of you become a crew, and you collaborate to meet your life goals together. So the center of the crew is around what we call intentions. Think of intentions as 12-month goals. You establish those for yourself. You upload them into a digital portal along with actions against them. And your crew is effectively your accountability partner for you moving your life forward. You interface digitally on our platform, and you also meet in person, usually once a quarter in person. But now we've been hosting these gatherings virtually, which is really fascinating. And crews are meeting more often than that because it's easier to get together virtually. My life's work is advancing women and girls. It's pretty much why I'm on the planet. And one of the most incredible experiences that I've had resulted from just saying yes to pretty much every woman that, reached out to me for a number of years. So I would say in 2014, probably, I started getting to a point in my career where I was getting a lot of requests to connect. Some of you might already be at that place in your career or your life where you're getting the pings. Can I get a mentor? Can I meet with you? Can we just get coffee? Can I pick your brain? I was starting to get overwhelmed with those at about that time. And I did something that was very counter to my drop the ball philosophy, which is to start just saying, sure, yes. But I had to organize it. So I would meet women on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9, 10, and 11 a.m. I used to do this for many years. I only recently stopped doing it. I used to meet women at coffee shops, but then these collaborative co-working spaces like the Wing popped up. I was actually the first member to walk into, that Flatiron Wing. Now we have amazing places like Luminary that, oh my gosh, you came in just the right time.
We'll talk about Luminary because we have a great partnership with Luminary that's about to happen. So we'll talk about that. Hey,
yes, we do too. And so one of the observations that I made about women in talking to so many, and it's been, the reason why it's been such an incredible experience for me is because if you're someone who's constantly talking to women, talking about women, it's a whole different experience to actually take the time to listen to women's stories, one-on-one. And when I started doing that, one of the observations I made was that even though we psychologically understand that we're not alone and we have lots of people around us, our family, our friends, our coworkers, we largely operate as if our journeys are solo endeavors, not a team sport. In other words, if we have a problem, the first question psychologically we'll ask ourselves is, how am I going to solve this problem? When I think that the more important question to ask is, who's going to help me solve this problem? So because, as I mentioned before, I have a lot of really incredible people in my life, mostly women, who have supported me. And I have specifically a group of peer mentors that I call my crew that have been really influential in my life, especially over the past several years. I'd been advocating to women, and I kind of came up with this pep talk about how you really need to find your crew. And so kind of no matter what her issue was, I would say, well, who's helping you figure this out? You've got to find your crew. You've got to have a group of women who are holding you accountable, who you share your ambitions with, who are helping you to create a plan. Like, everybody needs this. And women would say, yeah, that's great. And I would send them on their way. January of 2018 now, it was my 10 a.m. slot on a Tuesday. I'm talking to a woman. It's the end of the meeting. I'm giving her my pep talk about how she needed to find her crew. And I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with someone when you could tell they weren't feeling you, what you were saying. You could tell from their body language, but that's how I felt. And so I just had to stop and ask, is everything okay? And bless her heart, she was brave enough, courageous enough to say, actually, it's not okay. And she said to me, Tiffany, I understand theoretically this idea that you're talking about of a crew. And I think if I had this incredible group of women, in my life, it would help me to move my life forward. But by the time I go to enough cocktail parties, conferences, events, introduce myself to a bunch of people, collect all the business cards, then somehow like pull them out of the bottom of my bag or my desk drawer, email, schedule the coffees and the teas and the lunches. And then I'm supposed to like meet with all these people, find out who I'm compatible with, who we can, and then curate like 10 or 12 of us to host quarterly gatherings. And like what you're describing sounds very overwhelming. I read this book called Drop the Ball that you wrote. I already feel like I have a lot on my plate. And what you're describing is something that obviously has been easy for you to do. But I had to take time off of my job to meet you at the wing at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. In addition to that full-time job, I have 3 kids. I have a mom with a diagnosis. I have a dog. I have a commute. I don't have time to find my crew. I think what you're asking is really hard to do if you're, someone like me. And that moment was what I now call a Tiffany's epiphany moment where, I really had to say to myself, my gosh, she's right. And if my life's work really is advancing women and girls, then instead of just preaching to women about how they need to find their crew, I should just find the damn crew. Like I should find her. I should be the person to find her crew. Mm-hmm. And that's how the crew was launched within a few months after that. I will say that I had learned what I call LAVO lessons. I had previously worked for a startup that was all about millennial women and helping them to elevate their careers. And I took some of those LAVO lessons and poured them into my thinking around how to launch the crew and how to get it off of the ground. But it's been an incredible journey. And I'm really excited about what we're creating.
Well, one of the things that is a real genuine problem for so many people right now is, or genuine worry, is what's going to happen to my job or my business in this new world, this new situation. And I know that this is not applicable to everything, but you were telling me that you've actually had an uptick in people wanting to participate in the crew as you've pivoted to a virtual model. Could you talk about that? And I think that last week we talked about how to carpe the chaos, and how in every disruption, every chaotic situation, if you can just look at it, if you could just see the possibilities and see how you can take that energy and turn it into something that will propel you forward, there's usually a way. And I think it's fascinating that you found the way pretty quickly here. So can you speak to that?
Yes, I think there's a number of dynamics happening. So, our projections, just like any business in this climate, were that things were going to go down, largely because we have a membership model. It's $499 to become a member of the crew. We do have a payment plan for those who may need that. But at the end of the day, in the midst of uncertainty and a crisis, this is not groceries. This is not a healthcare bill. So our assumption was women won't use their disposable income for something like this. So we were actually surprised at the uptick in applications. I think there's a number, and they're up by 79%. I mean, they're up in a huge way. I think there's a number of things happening. I think one, on a very pragmatic level, we do a lot of marketing through digital advertising. And I think a lot of big digital advertisers may have just pulled out, of the system. So I think with women maybe spending more time at home, they actually see our ad and have maybe bandwidth to respond to it in a way that they didn't before. So I think maybe the exposure is helping. I think the other piece to keep in mind is, as we move toward this virtual world in the midst of this crisis, that if you were already a part of an incredible community like Take the Lead, right? You already knew Gloria. You already had benefited from what this community had to offer. Then you can hop on a virtual, happy hour and connect with her. And you have some semblance of relational, alignment with the other people who are on. But if you weren't already a part of a community, you're not going to just stumble upon a virtual happy hour. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of awkward to host virtual events for people who don't know each other. So I think the idea of being matched, and this level of curation that the crew does with a small group, of 10 people, and we're going to curate, we're going to match you together, then we're going to introduce you to one another. And then we're going to provide the structure, and we're going to provide the framework for your interaction with one another, all rooted and centered around your intention. That sounds very appealing in this world, especially if you live alone. So we just, we look at the data, and a lot of there's an uptick in single women, who are applying to the crew, I think because they're at home, and it's hard, especially if you were an extrovert, to be in your home. I think in part, the crew is therapy. So I think those are some of the reasons why, at the end of the day, people want connection. They want meaningful connection. And I think any company, any platform, including Take the Lead, that's providing that for people right now, I think is poised to do really well.
Is there any particular advice you'd give to people who are trying to think through, how can I make something work?
Yes.
In this situation?
Get as close as possible to your consumer, to your customer, as crazy and inefficient it might be to do so. One of the benefits of moving our crews to virtual is that they're all now on Zoom. Every gathering is now conducted on Zoom. There would have been no way for me to participate in everyone's gathering in the human, in-person world, but now I can. So every crew gathering that's hosted, I'm in it. After I get off of this, I'll be hopping on a crew gathering that's happening in Denver. It's crazy. Basically every night I'm spending a couple of hours in a crew gathering. But what that's allowed me to do is really understand in a deep way her journey, what she's going through right now, what her needs are. And that allows you to pivot and pilot in ways that are serving her and meeting her needs. So for example, one of the first things I noticed in the gatherings was that everyone's intentions had been turned upside down. So if you can imagine, you join this thing called the crew, you put up that you want to get a promotion this year, you want to get 500 more Instagram followers, you want to lose 10 pounds. Let's just say, okay, all of a sudden this crisis hits, you're on the verge of potentially losing your job, let alone getting a promotion. All you're doing is stress eating. So you're not losing the 10 pounds, and you're not sure what kind of content, to put up on Instagram. All of a sudden those intentions need to change, but overhauling them and also dealing with the crisis was a bit much. So I thought, you know what, we do this crew coaching, but what a lot of members might need is one-on-one coaching. Well, we have a lot of certified coaches who are in our constellation. That's what we call ourselves, a constellation of women that are committed to ensuring each other thrive. I thought, well, what if I pull a call out to our certified coaches and see if they would be willing to do some coaching sessions? Well, of course they would. You put the call out. We always are afraid to ask. Half the stuff we don't get is because we didn't ask, for it. So before you negotiate with yourself out of what you need to thrive, just make the ask, make the call. And so we started hosting, we created a Calendly schedule of 30-minute intention revamp sessions where you could get on for 30 minutes with a coach. Because all the intentions are on the platform, you can share your screen and she can support you in retooling your intentions for 30 minutes so that by the time you interact with your crew, you know what you're doing next. Those slots were out in 2 hours, like all the slots were taken. So now we're interested in, wow, that was an amazing offering. How can we potentially add that as some kind of upsell, opportunity for our business? I would have never gone in that direction or known that that could be a pilot or anything since then. The other business line, or other opportunity that we're thinking about now is what we call cross-crew connections. So right now you're matched with a group of women who are very diverse by design, different industries, different backgrounds, different family configurations. It's one of the most amazing, rich experiences about the crew. It's a group of women you would not have met otherwise. So you'll have different intentions. Well, once this starts, I'm in the gatherings. Because I'm in all the gatherings, I can hear that a member in Denver is having a difficult time as a businesswoman, as an entrepreneur, trying to figure out how to pivot. And she has this intention. I can hear the next night that there's a woman in New York that has the same intention and struggling with the same thing. And then I'm in the gathering in San Francisco, I can hear the same thing. I'm like, oh, why don't I get the one in Denver, the one in San Francisco, and the one in New York and connect them so that they can collaborate, and galvanize around their intentions that they share. That's now called cross-crew connections. So I say, I wouldn't have come up with that with those pivots. Those came from you get close, to your customer. You find out what's going on, and you demonstrate and communicate that you care. We talked about Luminary. I got an email from Kate today that was like it wasn't like a HubSpot, like, CRM auto-generated email from Kate. I got a real message from the founder of Luminary checking in on me. And I'll share some information with her, but just bring whoever you're trying to serve in as close as possible to figure out, how you can serve them and how you can meet them, and call on your community to get help. Now, see, if I had have been like, ooh, everybody needs coaching, I can't coach everybody. Coaches are really expensive. How is that going to work in our business model? If I'd spent a lot of time trying to solve for that on my own, I could have never, not in the midst of this crisis. But I decided, let's ask for help. Let's get help from the women who I know are committed to this and who I know care.
Well, you've just helped me figure out exactly how to go about doing this with Take the Lead, because we're sort of in the same situation. Many of our leadership ambassadors are coaches, and we were just about to have that same conversation. And just hearing your experience tells me that that's good. We're on the right track there. We'll see what happens.
Yes, and by the way, part of the reason why our coaches were very happy to do this is because we generated leads for them.
Of course. Yes. Right. No, it makes the best of sense. So I want to ask you one more question, and then I see we have some questions it looks like we have some questions in the chat box. So Christina, be ready. I'm going to come to you. But I do want you to take a minute to talk about children and how people are having to pivot and deal with children at home and working from home, because this is an issue that so many people are facing right now, and some seem to be managing just fine. Some seem to be having real difficulty dealing with that shift. So could you share, something that you've found that's helpful, and
Yeah,
I know you have two children, right?
Yes, I have two. So I think first, it's really important when we talk about parenting in the midst of everything we're dealing with, that we divide parenting into like two very different buckets, because we tend to just say like working moms or parents. I think in the midst of this crisis, there's a very big difference between parents of small children, of young children, and the rest of us who are in a very different category. People who are parenting really small children right now deserve really big gold medals, okay? Because the demands of having to continue to earn a livelihood and be a breadwinner via Zoom, when you have a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old at home, is a very different experience than trying to do that when you have an 11 and a 13-year-old like I do, who are very happy to spend time on Fortnite and on YouTube and make their own pizza while you work. Okay, so we really don't, it's really two different worlds. Maybe school, is different. I'm not sending them on a bus, they're not going to school, but even with that, my kids can open a Google Doc, they can click the Zoom links, they can actually follow, their schedule. Mm-hmm. So I think the most important thing is, one, drop the ball on whatever rules, perfection. That's why I think it's harder for younger people with younger kids, because younger tiny kids need routine. We've blown apart. We've decided that the kids can binge on technology. They'll probably still get into college just because they binged for like 2 months on technology. Mm-hmm. It's not going to completely ruin them. So a lot of the barriers, parameters, we also have used this as an opportunity, not intentionally, but just because it's been needed, to make them more self-sufficient. I used to do a lot of cooking. Right now I'm here. My daughter is in the kitchen. I don't know how it's going to turn out exactly. I think that it will be edible. But my 11-year-old daughter is now cooking dinner for the family. She never did that before. I'll be honest with you. I would not have expected her to do it. Probably wouldn't have asked her to do it. But in this environment, she will be cooking dinner. She'll be washing all of her clothes. She will be this weekend cleaning the toilet, scrubbing the bathtub. Like they're going to be the most self-sufficient children, that you could possibly imagine. So I think use it as the opportunity. Put up your sensory boundaries. I can't remember if we spoke about that after we had gone live, but I think it's really important to, get your glass of wine for your happy hour. For me, it's the tea, it's the candles, I think is really important. And forgive yourself. It's going to be a mess, and that's okay. I think it's really keep in mind.
I want to say, about children is that, since in my own growing up and even with my own children, the world is a little different, to be sure. But, my parents never knew what I was doing, nor did they ask. I mean, if I didn't bring home A's on my report card, they would be upset. But other than that, they had no idea whether I was doing my homework. They had no idea who I was hanging out with in the afternoon. They didn't know. My kids ran around the neighborhood. It was like, be home for dinner, right? Because, that's just kind of how it was. And I think that parents are so much more involved in their children's lives now. And there's a lot of positive about that. At the same time, this may be a good course correction for people to kind of learn that, if probably for most children, if they didn't have regular schooling for the rest of this semester, it wouldn't make one bit of difference in the rest of their life. They would probably learn a lot of life lessons, like how to cook dinner and wash their clothes and other things that they need to know that in previous generations they would have actually learned, because that's kind of what they had to do. So I may be a little lackadaisical about it, but that's I think that may be a kind of a good course correction that's going on here. So feel free to argue with me. I know we have some questions, and I want to go to the questions right now. So let's do that.
Perfect. So I have a comment actually that relates to what we're just talking about. And somebody said there are different challenges for those who are parenting only child versus people who have multiple children. I think
right.
That's interesting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because if you have more than one, they have each other in a way. Although if they're 11 and 13, that's like, I don't know if you can hear them yelling right now, but there's a lot of that. And that, and that gets really hard. But certainly for the kids that really need the connection and the outlet to their peer group, that they got through school, that they got through play dates, it's really tough. And in fact, my daughter's best friend is an only child, and they've been spending a lot of time on Zoom and making ASMR videos together. And normally I just wouldn't let her be on, so often, but I know that Ryan needs support right now. So if my daughter can help do that, then I just let them do their thing.
Great.
Somebody else said, I hear some people saying, now is the time to start this company, write that book, etc., when some of us are just getting by. How can I find some of that inspiration to continue pursuing my goals while also navigating this extremely difficult time?
You may not be pursuing any goals right now. I am also baffled by the people who are putting up like images of the jigsaw puzzles that they've completed. There are apparently these D-Nice like dance parties happening that I know nothing about. I did try to spend. They're great. Are they good? Yes. Everyone's like, oh, you gotta do the D-Nice party. I'm like, the D-Nice party. So I actually had to, over the weekend, do a bit of soul searching, because I was trying to figure out what happened, Tiffany. You don't have the commute anymore. You don't have to take anybody to school anymore. There's all these things that you don't have to do anymore. And yet you're waking up at the same time. You're going to bed late. You feel like you actually have more to do. I think there's a number of things happening that we need to recognize. One is that interacting with people all day over Zoom requires something else different. than human interaction. I think we need to be sensitive to the fact that we were not built for this as humans. In particular, for those of us who may not be digital natives or may not spend all your day watching YouTube videos or on Fortnite, you actually spend time with human beings all day. I think it's very hard. There's an intensity that we have to recognize. I think the other piece is you may have now replaced some of that time with things that you either outsourced or you found some other way to do. I'm finding that it actually takes quite a bit of time to like clean up, to sort up, where you live serves multiple purposes now. So I am not in the category of, what more things am I doing right now? I'm definitely in the category of trying to get by, but because I already knew why I was on the planet, and because the work that I'm doing is helping to fuel other people's potential, it's a joy. It's a pleasure. I don't mind doing it, and it doesn't feel like a hardship at all. So I think if there are some ways that you can, one, chronicle your journey. I definitely spend a little bit of time journaling just because I want to know what was I thinking and feeling at this moment, looking back on it. I think that's really fascinating if you can do that. If you can take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I try to do 10, I'm gonna be honest, sometimes it's only 5, to just close your eyes and be present. Headspace has like a New York, if you're in New York, partnership, with the state where they're offering things for free. There's another platform called Journey Meditation that's really amazing. I think that at least gets you centered so you can decide what you might focus on. But the idea that, we're in the midst of a viral pandemic, and now with my extra free time, I'm going to launch a new business or write that book. I just think we need to be honest with ourselves about what this really is. Especially if you're a socially conscious, caring person. You may be in your apartment where you have running water and Wi-Fi and people are delivering food to you, but you are not separate from what you're hearing in the media, from the news reports. You are very hyper aware that people are losing their lives right now. People are dying. I listened to a story on NPR this morning about all of the bodies and how they're trying to handle them respectfully, but how difficult it is because they are literally piling up. That has us, and I'm sitting here, on this amazing Zoom with like a cup of tea and some beautiful lighting. That also takes a toll when you're a responsible person. So figuring out how to fuel that energy and that care into how you can make a difference right now may also feel like a more healthy and responsible outlet than what am I going to do for myself right now.
I actually have a question that I'm curious for everybody who's with us this evening. There's something that feels to me like in the last couple of days has shifted a little bit. And it may just have to do with the fact that human beings are infinitely adaptable. But it feels to me like there's sort of this, okay, so this is where we are now. Eventually it's going to get better. We don't know when. This is where we are now. And I'm going to kind of deal with it. Could I just kind of have a show of hands to see, am I just kind of somewhere up in the clouds, or are any of the rest of you feeling sort of like, well, this is kind of like, how it's going to be for a little while, and I'm just going to deal. It doesn't make it easy, but so I just wondered, I mean, seriously, humans are really adaptable. Humans are incredibly adaptable. And so what I started thinking about is, so if we talk about what is the new normal, the question I would like to ask is, what do we want to normalize? What from this do we want to take that is positive and normalize that, as opposed to just adapting to whatever is going on? So that's where my head is right now. Thoughts?
I think it's a really interesting question, because depending upon where you sit, you may want to get back to normal, or you may want to never, go back. If you're kind of like, I'll deal with it, I imagine people who feel that way are likely in maybe a better financial position, or at least are still working. I don't think that people who have been laid off from their jobs and are looking at their cash flow and thinking about how they're going to feed their families are just dealing or feeling like they're just going to deal with this. I think that there's a lot of people in genuine crisis for whom the anxiety and the stress of just figuring out how they're going to manage is taking up a lot of mental energy and space. I think that I was thinking about it though, because I was thinking, well, what are the things, how will you behave differently? What will you do differently? A good example is I had to set up, I have a co-working space. I have multiple spaces, but one of my spaces is a co-working space that's 2 blocks away from my house in Harlem. And I've been working there for 4 years. It's like an extension of my apartment, really. And because I can never work in my apartment, I can never work at home. There's like too much going on here. Well, I didn't have a choice. I had to order a desk from Wayfair, set it up in my bedroom, and I've been in here for a few weeks now. And I'm like, wow, I would have never known that I could actually, work here. But here's the thing, that co-working space is run by a woman in my community, a woman of color, in fact, who was there before WeWork came to Harlem. I feel really committed to her, so you get very torn about, wow, I've learned something new, but will I go back there to support Charlene? I think if you were a person who lived a life of purpose and who had some semblance of who you were and whose shoulders you stood on, I'm not sure you're going to live your life so drastically differently. This will not change who I vote for. It's not going to change who I donate money to. It's not going to change who I fight for, me personally, because all of those people are the people who are, in this case, really impacted. But I will think of those decisions differently, I think. So I think it's fascinating. I've learned I don't need mammies. I mean, there's like all these practical things. The one huge difference, and I don't know if you guys are experiencing this too, is I'm saving so much money. I didn't realize how much money, I used to say, oh, I have this lifestyle or this budget. And I'm realizing what's happening, where all of this money is not leaving my bank account. What's happening? So I think I'm definitely going to be reevaluating how I spend my money.
Well, I mean, one of the sort of like in the big picture of things, and then I want, there's some other questions for you, Tiffany, to go on to several, I think it looks like relating to, people want to know more about the crew and things like that. But I mean, when I look at pictures of the clean air in Los Angeles, I wonder if people are going to wake up to, well, that's the product. That's one of the values of working from home. That's maybe I will buy an electric car the next time I need to buy a car, or I'm just thinking about sort of the macro. Will we learn a few things from this experience that we would not have learned in any other way? For me, I'm really cognizant that healthcare workers, 70% of the healthcare workers are women. Are women on the front lines. 25% of the leaders in the healthcare system are women. That's not right. That's not right. So I'm like, okay, how can we take these things and really make sure that they become the impetus for some major shifts that need to go on? And so that's the, sort of in the macro, that's just kind of what I'm thinking about when I'm awake at night right now. So let's go on with some other questions here.
Okay, so we have some questions about the crew for Tiffany, and I'll give you two, and maybe you can address both of them. How widespread is the crew now? Is there a list of cities? And can you talk about some of the outcomes of the crew since you started it?
Right now, there are crews in Seattle, San Francisco, Denver, Philly, DC, and New York. for the most part, we're onboarding. That was because when I launched the crew, I thought, I want to be in all these cities. We're just going to grow in all these cities, until I raised our first round of capital and then realized you can't, you can't actually grow that way. You have to start somewhere and then branch out. So we're largely onboarding crews in New York. But we do, once you have your first year in the crew, some women I discovered are like, I guess these are extroverts who like want to meet more women. They want to be rematched. So we do onboard crews every once in a while in other cities. And then what was the second question?
The second question was,
Outcomes.
can you talk about some of the outcomes of the crew since you've started it?
I think, let's see, in terms of, I wonder if they mean in terms of the member outcomes, what members have been able to achieve, do you think? Got it.
I would think so, yeah.
Okay, got it. So our members' intentions run the gamut. We are agnostic to your intentions. So I think the most powerful intentions are ones that are somewhat specific. So we had a member who really wanted to get a promotion. She wanted a new role, and it needed to have chief in the title, which I thought was really interesting. She was very specific that she wanted to have chief in the title, and she achieved that intention. We have another member who runs a nonprofit and wanted to do a bike race across her state to raise money for her nonprofit. That was one of her intentions. We have another member who is a real estate agent. She had a plot of land that was ironically 40 acres, and she's African American. I won't go into all the details of the irony of that, but she needed to sell that plot of land. And she did it. She finally got rid of it. We have one member who has a gift. It's called synesthesia. Basically, she's someone who, have you heard of this, Gloria?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's somebody who her brain processes senses differently. So when she hears you say your name, she sees color. And for a long time, she's been meaning to launch a site that allows you to enter your name and then to see what your name looks like in color. It's a synesthesia project. Her name is Bernadette Sheridan. She launched it. She was actually, her deadline for meeting this intention was December 31st of 2019. And she actually hit, she hit go on the site, and it's gone viral. I mean, she's had over 1 million hits. It's amazing. So those are just some of the outcomes, some of the things that women have achieved, through collaboration with their crew.
That's great.
So I learned what synesthesia is from Blue Man Tube. They have a song about synesthesia.
Okay.
And I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it meant, but my grandson, who I took to see Blue Man Tube, knew it.
Yeah.
Not something I would ordinarily know. Sorry, go ahead.
Somebody else asked, can you share the demographics of the crew members by industry and years of experience?
Yes. So the average age of a crew member is 39. So we say that we focus on women in the middle. They're largely in middle management. So if you went to our member directory, you would see lots of directors, you would see lots of managers, you would see some VPs, you wouldn't see any chiefs, unless she maybe was an entrepreneur and ran a small business. So most of our members are Gen X women. They are across all different industries. It's weighted based on the region. So for example, in California, in San Francisco, there's a lot more women in technology. In New York, there's a lot more women in finance, women in entertainment. I'm sure depending upon, there's a lot of women who work in government that are in, DC and those crews. So it kind of depends on the region as well. But we love artists. We have some teachers, a couple public school teachers in our constellation. So we try to ensure that there's diversity there. Different family configurations. We really need to work on our LGBTQ sisters. We have a small percentage of them. Yeah, almost 60% of our members are women of color, but that's just because the algorithm is doing a lot of the work there. So if you tell an algorithm, if the person who told the engineers to build the algorithm has a bias toward diversity and said, generate crews that are diverse, you're going to end up with more women of color. Yeah, in a group of 10. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah. Somebody said, has anyone been doing family board game nights to keep the family engaged and having fun? Curious on your thoughts on that, Tiffany.
Oh, I know actually a number of people who have been doing that. I mentioned puzzles before. I mentioned that because I actually know someone who's been using puzzles as an opportunity. For us, it's just been talking, to one another. By the time everyone's done with their schoolwork, our kids have these extracurricular things that they like to do. Our son is a musician. Our daughter loves art, and by the time she's made all her craft thing and cleaned it up, I'm done with my calls. I go out, to dinner, and it's usually late because I've been in these crew gatherings, remember? So tonight it's going to be really late because it's the crew in Denver. So because of the time difference, I'll be on with them. I think it's a great idea to get people, off of the tube and really focused on connecting with one another. And it's been really fun. I know it sounds strange, but I feel like I'm getting to know my family in a different way.
I've heard that from a lot of people.
Yeah.
I heard that from so many people, and people who say, oh, it's so nice, I get to have lunch with my kids. And I never did that before. Yeah, right. So
could I maybe just build on that I don't know if I'm able to say anything, or is this?
Yes, sure.
Okay?
We hear you. You bet.
Yeah. So I, was feeling a lot of the isolation, obviously feelings that I think a lot of people are going through. And, unfortunately my family is in Chicago and I'm stuck in San Francisco. So I was kind of wanting to get closer to them. So I built this tool. It's free. And it's basically family board games over video chat. So it's kind of like this, but just introduces board games. So it's kind of brought us closer together. And so I was just curious if you see that being useful, and if you think that, that's something that maybe people would be interested in. I don't know.
I think they would right now. You could probably raise money right now based on it. David, I highly encourage you to put the link in the chat so that people can start playing around with it. I would push it out there right now as soon as possible. Get on social, get as many of the people that are on social pushing it out. This is a really cool thing. I think it would do really well. And I think you might have the next big business, because having family that's separated from one another is not going away. Right. Maybe the nuclear family will go back to school and work, but it's possible. I don't know if the circumstances are demanding that of you right now, but some family members live in San Francisco anyway, and some live in Chicago, and this would be an amazing way for them to connect.
And people are now getting accustomed to doing these things. That's what, I think it's one of the things that we've been forced to become accustomed to doing things in a digital way with each other that we probably wouldn't have otherwise. So
totally.
Yeah. So well, that's great. I'll put the link in the chat here. We have we kind of launched this last week, and we've got I would say in the past week we've had about 500 hours of games played. So it's definitely been pretty popular. And I think one of the things we're trying to do is connect with communities of good people to kind of organize game nights. So Tiffany, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. If that might be something you'd be interested in. Again, there's no it's free. So we're just trying to bring people together, especially at this time where it's been difficult. So I would just be curious.
Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat.
Yeah, put it in the chat.
Will go out to everybody who's been on the call, and it will also go out to everybody who signed up and wasn't able to actually be with us physically today. So,
cool.
So thanks for bringing that up, Dave. Appreciate
it. Yeah.
I also I saw something about a good pandemic parenting forum, and Rachel Simmons. Gloria, you probably know Rachel.
Oh yeah,
Simmons.
sure. Yeah.
She's actually doing she's been doing this really great series for parents about how to manage, parenting in the midst of this crisis. I was trying to find it. But Rachel Simmons is just a really great thought leader. and founder of an organization called Girls Leadership. So just Google that. I was trying to find it right now.
Okay, we'll find it. We'll find it, and we'll put it in
she's
the
a great
notes
resource.
that we send to people. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So I want to give just in the last few minutes that we have, and I noticed a few people are having to leave. So before everybody needs to move on to whatever their next social engagement might be this evening, Surabhi, since you're here, why don't we just go ahead and mention the program that we have coming up? It's something new, and we haven't tried it before. We were planning to do it in person, and we've totally pivoted, and we're ready to do it online. So do you want to chat a little bit about that, Surabhi?
Absolutely. So first, I would say it's a delight to see Tiffany and Gloria, both of whom are Luminary members, and I miss seeing you in person. One day, when it is safe for our communities to do that, we will do that again. I'm the Chief Impact Officer at Luminary. I'm also a leadership ambassador with Take the Lead, and we decided we should put our heads together and think about one of the things that Gloria talks about a lot, which is the power to. And if we can reframe power over to power to, it gives us a lot more agency to think about changing the things we can. And so we are kicking off a series called Power to Take the Lead at Luminary, and it will start in late April. And it's a series of 3. We're going to start with Carpe the Chaos because this is our ever-changing world, and I think it will be a great partnership to bring together multiple communities, the Take the Lead community. Luminary, Tiffany, we should make sure we get you information in case any of the crew members might want to partake, and really build a community of those of us who are looking to think about ourselves and our leadership and our relationship to power differently. And Gloria and I are going to facilitate. I should
yes.
Put that in as well.
So I'm very excited about that. I'm looking forward to it. And so that and we will be continuing to do these virtual happy hours for the next few weeks and see how they go. And as this is one of the things of if people are starting to have other things that they're doing, we'll pivot to some other format. And I think for everybody right now, it's all about Heights. Is that your last name or your first name? Last name. Okay. All right. Put something in the chat about innovation. And this is a moment for innovation. And I really appreciate that. And I think that's exactly right. We'll just all continue to innovate and to create. And everything that Take the Lead does, we can do virtually. So we're just letting everybody know that. And we'll be relaunching our core online 9 Leadership Power Tools course probably within about a month. And we'll just see what happens, and we'll see after this is over whether people still want to be in the virtual world or whether they want to go back to the in-person world again. We'll see how that goes. So we have 2 minutes. Tiffany, want to give you the chance to wrap up with any parting words of advice that you have to people.
Well, first of all, we are also partners with Luminary at the Crew. We're actually based there when we can actually meet in person, and we launch our Inception gatherings there. So it's really beautiful. I think, at the end of the day, and one of the things my parents taught me was that if you want something you've never had before, you're going to have to do something that you've never done before in order to get it. And if there is one silver lining to all of this, is that we're doing lots of things in lots of ways that we've never done before. And I'm really excited about what's in store, about what we learned from it. Not just us individually, but how it helps us all to advance humanity. So I thank you so much for having me and letting me share with you. And I learned from your comments. And thank you so much, Gloria, for your leadership.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Any last burning questions? All right. Okay. Thank you all for joining us today. It's great to see so many familiar faces and some people that I don't know. So that's what makes it really great, is to be able to continue to expand our circles, expand our crews, expand our networks. And Tiffany, let me just say thank you so much to you. To everybody, be well, be safe, stay healthy, take the precautions that we need to take for everybody's benefit, but especially for your own. We really, really care about how you are and how you're faring, and always want to hear from you on social media or elsewhere. So next week, we will have this incredible woman who I met when we were both speaking at a conference a few months ago, and I was impressed with her desire to create a travel business. She wants to travel all over the world. Well, you talk about a business that has to pivot right now and rethink. And I noticed on Twitter the other day that she said one of the things that she's doing right now is preparing to do a TED Talk, 3 TED Talks in 3 languages. So, Jennifer, I think Jennifer is her first name, right? Have I got that right, Christina? Yeah, Jennifer Seha. I don't know if I'm saying her last name correctly. I'll find out by next week. But next week, we'll be talking about when you have to make a really super major pivot. And I'm also just fascinating to know how anybody can make a cogent speech. I mean, in 1 language is hard enough. 3 languages, I can't even imagine. So, so that's what we're going to be talking about next week. And thank you all again so much. Look forward to staying in touch on social media and elsewhere. Everybody, stay healthy and safe. Thank you again, Tiffany.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hi, Angel. So.
All right.
All right, we did it. So I have to get on I have to record some podcasts.